President Moon Jae-In has returned to South Korea from his 5-day trip to the United States, where he and President Joe Biden held their first ever in-person summit at the White House on Friday. The two leaders reaffirmed their commitment to the bilateral alliance and agreed to cooperate on a wide range of issues, from COVID-19 vaccines, net zero goals, core industries such as semiconductors, 5G, biotech, and even space. But of course, much of the attention was on how they would coordinate their stances on handling North Korea and regional issues amid America's rivalry with China. We discussed the outcome of the Moon-Biden summit with Kim Jae-chun, a renowned political scientist and professor at Sogang University's Graduate School of International Studies, and Mark Takola, vice president of Korea Economic Institute of America, who served as deputy chief of mission at the U.S. Embassy in South Korea from 2009 to 2012. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us this morning. And well, let's go straight into the questions, starting with you, Dr. Kim. Now, there did seem to be a rather different atmosphere at this summit between Presidents Moon and Biden compared to the previous face-to-face meetings that President Moon held with former US leader Donald Trump. President Moon did call this summit a new landmark in the South Korea-US alliance. Would you agree with that?
Well, I agree. I agree that the summit set a new milestone in the Iraq-U.S. alliance, in the sense that it really presented an opportunity to upgrade this alliance to a truly global and value-based partnership. What attracted my attention the most is global vaccine partnership that both leaders agreed on. You know, South Korea has the vaccine production capability. As far as vaccine production capability is concerned, South Korea is one of the leading countries in the world, but we don't have the original technology with which we can produce vaccine. The U.S. has the original technology and production capabilities, but not enough to provide it to less fortunate countries and people all around the world. But now that South Korea can produce American vaccine in the form of CMO, I think the alliance is in a good position where we can provide much needed vaccine all around the world. The alliance was going through, as you said, very difficult times during the presidency of Donald Trump, but this summit was really truly a turning point that now we can restore some semblance of normalcy to the alliance and upgrade it to a truly global partnership.
Right, and I wonder what you made of it, Mr. Takola. I mean, what stood out to you the most about the summit? I mean, especially with this vaccine cooperation that was agreed upon by the two countries.
Well, the vaccines are a part of it, but this summit had every sign of being a very well-prepared summit. A lot of staff work went into it, obviously. If you look at the fact sheet that was issued along with a joint statement, you'll see there's great opportunities for cooperation. So I think the staffs worked hard to find all the areas we could move ahead on. I think following the Trump administration, it's almost as if all these issues are building up over time, and now finally they can sit down and get to business. So it's not just the vaccines, economics, the global pandemic cooperation, democracy, human rights. It covered an awful lot of ground. So there's two things you hope for a summit. One is to issue a clear signal about the relationship between the two countries. The other is to lay the groundwork for future cooperation. I think the summit succeeded on both counts.
So really, we saw the traditionally sort of North Korea or security-focused alliance expand into a wider scope of things. And well, Dr. Kim, of course, Mr. Moon was hoping that there would be some progress in terms of handling North Korea. And before the summit, there was a lot of talk about whether the US would formally recognize the Panmunjom Declaration made by the two Korean leaders in 2018, and there was certainly a nod to it in the joint statement. But then during the press conference, though, Mr. Biden said that he will not give international recognition or give Kim Jong-un what he wants at this point, but he's going to have to wait and see before sitting down for talks with him. So, well, what is so significant about this declaration, and do you think there still might be some differences in how Seoul and Washington want to approach North Korea?
Well, it is no secret that President Moon is still very enthusiastic about what is known as a Korean peace process, you know, to mend fences between the two Koreas so that peace can prevail on the Korean Peninsula. But, you know, Moon's peace process has been sort of stalemated since the Hanoi summit in 2019. And now Moon is very eager to rekindle the momentum of the process. But one precondition for that is for the U.S. and North Korea to put behind hostilities and resume nuclear negotiation. And if you look at the Panmunjom Declaration and also Singapore Declaration, there they agreed, the U.S. and North Korea agreed to put behind hostilities and work toward denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, not North Korea. So I think recognizing the importance of Panmunjom Declaration was important to President Moon in that context. But that said, do they have a bit of differences with regard to North Korea? Yes, I think there are some differences in how both leaders want to approach North Korea. Moon wants to lower the bar to resume negotiation as soon as possible. But Biden isn't really willing to lower the bar at this stage, although he said many times that doors are wide open. Doors to the negotiation is wide open.
Of course, in the Biden administration, they weren't so clear about their North Korea policy review yet, but they did say they will take calibrated approaches to North Korea. So, right, there might still be some differences there, perhaps. And well, Mr. Tokolo, Sung Kim, there was a surprise appointment there at the news conference. Mr. Biden appointed him as America's special envoy to North Korea. How significant is this appointment, and what do we know about his approach to North Korea?
I think the appointment of Sung Kim as special envoy shows the administration takes North Korea very seriously as an issue. They're bringing in somebody who is as experienced as anyone, maybe more experienced than anyone in the U.S. government on negotiating with North Korea. Sung Kim was the special envoy for 6 party talks. Then he was special envoy for North Korea from 2014 to 16. So he's returning to the position. He's deeply experienced and he's well connected and highly respected. So I think he's an excellent choice. One thing I'll say for the Biden administration is they tend not to work by individuals. They tend to work by teams. So I think Sung Kim will not be on his own doing this. He'll be working with colleagues in the National Security Council and the State Department. So it'll be a team approach.
And Dr. Kim, well, Presidents Moon and Biden, they didn't really clarify things when it came to China. There were a lot of questions over whether South Korea would be directly involved in the Quad alliance, how they would be involved, and the two leaders didn't directly mention China either in their news conference or joint statement. What do you think this all means? I mean, do you think this possibly indicates that South Korea is still pondering over how it's going to manage the sort of diplomatic pressure coming from both sides?
Well, Soo-young, you mentioned Quad, but for one thing, Quad is not an alliance. It is loosely organized security dialogue mechanism between the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India, and there's no way for South Korea to become a member of Quad. Quad is not going to expand to, say, Penta or Hexa, including South Korea and some other countries like maybe New Zealand or Vietnam. Quad is going to operate in the form of Quad Plus. Some Quad countries and some non-Quad countries will cooperate in different issue areas. For instance, that global vaccine partnership between South Korea and the U.S. we just talked about is actually Quad Plus in the area of coronavirus, COVID, and that semiconductor investment, that deal is a part of Quad Plus in the area of semiconductor industry. And if you look at the joint statement this time that really came out after the summit, both countries recognize the importance of Quad and free and open Indo-Pacific. And also, both leaders recognize the importance of preserving peace in Taiwan Strait. Sure, Soo-young, as you said, South Korea is still in a very difficult position between the U.S. and China. But this time, really, during this summit, I think President Moon threw support to President Biden, really.
Right. He did mention the word linchpin quite a lot of times, President Moon, and he did reaffirm his commitment to preserving peace and also a rules-based order in the Asia-Pacific. So, it does seem that, they have reaffirmed those commitments. And, well, Mr. Tokolo, I was wondering what your opinion was on this as well, on China, where the two leaders stand.
Yeah, I think the summit was very useful in not being against anything. This was not an anti-China summit. This was a pro-values, pro-cooperation summit. So I think they made very clear the U.S. and South Korea intend to work on issues regionally and around the world of great importance. Economics, applications of high technology, others that were in this list that they put in the joint statement. So the summit didn't have to talk about being anti-China. The summit talked about what South Korea and U.S. are going to positively work on together. They emphasized human rights. They emphasized democracy in their statement. They emphasized rule of law. So I think you don't have to say China to see that the U.S. and South Korea share some values to which China does not subscribe. You don't need to make it explicit. Now, I'd say, too, on the cooperation, that the summit specifically mentioned cooperation between the U.S. and South Korea, matching together the U.S.'s vision for free and open Indo-Pacific and South Korea's New Southern Policy. So the summit endorsed the New Southern Policy. You can cooperate without having to be linked up institutionally, just by pursuing the same ends.
And Dr. Kim, well, in terms of other areas that the two countries can cooperate on, Mr. Moon and Mr. Biden, they agreed to end the current guidelines on South Korea's use of missiles. Now, what significance does this hold, and what kind of changes do you expect to see?
President Moon has really wanted to abolish these missile guidelines between between the U.S. and then South Korea, since he came into power. This is an important part of his efforts to restore South Korea's defense sovereign rights. That goes to his efforts to restore wartime operational control from the United States. For the United States, I think this guideline was really important because the U.S., like it or not, is a leader country in missile technology control regime, MTCR, missile technology control regime. So it was important to put a limit on missile technology of South Korea, particularly because South Korea is an important ally to the U.S. U.S. had to set an example. But now the situation has changed. China's threat is on the rise. China is trying very hard to catch up with the Americans in terms of military capability. And North Korea. North Korea has ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile, with which they can deliver nuclear weapons to Californian shores. So for South Korea to have better missiles will operate as better deterrent against China and also against North Korea. And for South Korea, this is also very significant because now we have a chance to improve our space industry. Now we can seriously enter space industry because space industry requires enhanced missile technologies. So this was really an important decision that will benefit South Korea.
It was quite incredible to see all the areas that the two countries will be working on, really going beyond the traditional alliance that they had. And Mr. Takola, of course, South Korea's biggest tech companies, the likes of Samsung, LG, Hyundai Motor Group, they accompanied President Moon on his trip to Washington. And these firms, they committed to making $25 billion worth of investment in the US. And while that is actually a lot less than the amount that many had been anticipating, how significant is this move for both sides?
Well, South Korea has so much foreign direct investment in the U.S. now that anything is just adding to a very large investment that exists. There's over $60 billion in South Korean investment in the U.S. So 25 more would be welcome, but it's additional. It's not a brand new thing. I think it's important for the Biden administration because this is part of what they're terming the foreign policy for the middle class. I think one thing that the Biden administration wanted to show with the American working public, the American public in general, that the U.S.-South Korea relationship benefits American workers and American companies by increasing the amount of trade and investment going both ways.
Right, and yes, he certainly said that in the joint news conference as well, just emphasizing how forward-looking, future-oriented this partnership is and how many sectors are going to benefit from that, and of course the people of both countries. This is where we'll have to end the interview today, I'm afraid, as we're out of time, but that was Kim Jae-chun, Professor at Sogang University's Graduate School of International Studies, and Mark Takola, Vice President of Korea Economic Institute of America. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
It was great to be with you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.